All right, AP Human Geography. We're going to call these COVID notes. Hopefully, this is going to be the only time we have to deal with COVID notes this year. But this is just going to be, I don't know, you're just going to pretend like, Mr. Floyd's there with you in class, and this is up on the big board, and we're just kind of talking like we've already been talking as we're going from slide to slide, and you're jotting down notes and getting some stuff in the left column and all that kind of thing, okay? And I'm going to try to do my best, even though I kind of feel a little like, I don't know, hit by a semi truck. But I think I got enough. I think I got enough gas in me to at least maybe get through this. I was trying to remember where we left off. I know we talked about Jon Snow because we've already kind of moved on to doing that. And I was trying to remember with this slide. I think that we were. This is kind of where I'm kind of like, all right, this is probably where I'm getting some COVID fog. Is like, did we cover this or did we not? Because I know that we're kind of, when we're looking at this, we're heading back to our four level analysis when we talk about this spatial approach. Okay, and if I'm just kind of going back to again, some of our vocabulary that we have on our list number 2. That's where we're getting into a little bit of just this old concept of just kind of how how we use that four level analysis to see the way the way things are arranged. But I kind of know I'm getting the idea that we kind of covered this stuff, and if we didn't, I think the slide here is pretty straightforward as far as, when we talk about the spatial approach, these are the questions we're trying to answer. Okay. That whole kind of thing about, why are things where they are? I mean, whereas we're going to find, rarely is it going to be random. There's always usually going to be something about it. Okay, why are things distributed as they are? Why are there why are there changes in patterns? Again, I'm pretty sure we covered this stuff in class. I'm just this is where I rely on your young minds to always kind of keep me in place where we need to be. And I assume that if we covered that we covered some of this as well. And so, just kind of talking about the differences between, we're talking about space and location. Space that just kind of, space is kind of the distance between two or more phenomena or things, and then with location, there we have where things are located, either like on a grid or whether it's relative to another location. Place is usually, whether we're talking about kind of the human or physical characteristics, kind of descriptors of a location. And then with region, we're talking about I know we covered all this. Okay, listen to me. It's my COVID brain. Okay, this is where we'll jump on with it today. Okay, this is where we are at, and so I'm gonna run us through. I don't know. I mean, like I said, we're making really good time here, which we need to be. And so, well, we're not going to finish Unit 1 here with these video notes. We're gonna make some progress. Okay. So, well, wait a minute. I'm getting ahead of myself already. Let me go ahead and focus here on site and situation. These are a couple of terms that we definitely will want to be really familiar with when we talk about site. Oh, hold on. All right, sorry about that. I'm gonna have to stop from time to time if I have like little coughing fits and stuff. I really don't want to cough at you on the microphone here. So when we talk about site, it's kind of like if I can get really technical about it, basically characteristics of a place right there at the immediate location. Okay, so we can think about like site when we think about Seton, and we can talk about the characteristics of the building itself. It's 2 stories, hallways with classrooms on either side, a big gymnasium downstairs, a chapel, kind of mini auditorium space upstairs. You're talking about the specific description of the immediate location. And then when we talk about situation, it's that location relative to other places around it. And so that's where we can go back again to the fact that, okay, so we have Seton, kind of in the eastern part of Vancouver, as far as, relative to the rest of Vancouver, across the street from, some storage units, kitty corner from a big Costco, big kind of empty fields on the one side of us, kind of the little industrial park on the, it's all those kind of things where we're talking about where we are in relation to the things around us. Okay. And so site, we just get really, really specific. And then situation, we kind of look at to see where things are at beyond there. Okay. That's your site and situation. We'll want to know about there. Let's see, when we talk about sense of place is kind of getting more into that idea of how we perceive a place. And a lot of times this kind of gets into, places that have a special meaning to us, whether it's, favorite vacation place, or, maybe it's Disney World, or, maybe it's your hometown. But when we have a connection to it that goes beyond just the geographical location, and there's almost like, whether you want to think of it as like a sentimental attachment sort of thing like that, that's what we talk about, that sense of place. Okay, and sometimes that means it's a good thing. That can also be bad. Sense of place, if you have something where something really bad happens to you and that association stays connected to that geographic location, sense of place can work in that regard too. So it kind of gets a little bit more into, again, almost kind of like the way we perceive. Okay. And that can have to do with our own experiences. That can have to do with our beliefs, with our emotions, all of that kind of thing. All right. Sense of place. Toponyms. These are the human names that we give to geographic locations. Okay, so whether it is the city of Vancouver, whether it is the Clark County, whenever humans drop names on anything from mountains to oceans to the settlements that we build that come eventually become cities. Those names that we give them, those place names, kind of a fancy way of describing it, those place names are known as toponyms. Okay, just a fancy little, just a little bit more of that vocabulary for us. All right. When we talk about distance and time, let's get some of these concepts we've already kind of chatted about here. All right. Start you off with time-space compression. And this is a concept that we'll come back and revisit in some of our other units. As a lot of this we will. Again, this is why we do Unit 1. It's kind of the foundation, which is why it just is very, very vocabulary heavy. It's because we're going to revisit many of these terms over and over again in different ways when we get into our more specific units. But time-space compression, another one of our vocab terms. And this is kind of how we've seen as time has marched on. You go back to, people first trying to, make the wheel all the way up to nowadays. And how those kind of improvements that we've been able to create in transportation. And then on top of that, improvements in communication. The invention of the phone back in the 19th century. And then all the way now to internet technologies and 4G, 5G, all that sort of thing, and the way that has, in a sense, made the world a smaller place. Okay, you think back in the early days before the sailing ships and all of that, the age of exploration, the world seemed like it was massive, like it was vast, because it was so difficult to get from place to place. And it was, besides writing a letter and having some way of being able to get it from point A to point B, communication was also, made the world seem like a vast, massive place. But as these technologies have improved over the centuries, here into the 21st century, it's made the world, in that regard, it's made the world smaller. You can be in instantaneous communications with someone on the other side of the world. It's just like, nothing there. You can jump on an aircraft and be, to the other part of the world in, 10, 12 hours. But I mean, still, it's something that's going to happen quickly. And whenever we talk about how improvements in transportation and communication have shrunk both time and distance between locations, that's what we mean by time-space compression. Okay, it's just kind of compressed it down. There we go. All right, spatial interactions. If I'm just kind of connecting back to what we have in our vocab list, this is where we have just kind of whenever we're talking about different locations and the kind of connections that we have between them. It could be contacts that we have between two locations. That could be whether it's two locations that do a lot of business with each other. You can look at it in numerous different ways of kind of flow of information between two locations, flow of trade goods between two locations. The more of that there is, the more spatial interaction there is between those two locations. If there isn't that much of it, yes, then we're talking about less spatial interaction. So you kind of measure it based on just what is going on between two different locations. We can talk about probably a high level of spatial interaction between Portland and Vancouver, all right? Every morning when I'm driving up from Portland to Vancouver, I am driving up Highway 205 with a whole lot of work vans and, a lot of other folks that are pouring out of the Portland area to head up to Vancouver to work. And then in the afternoon, I'm making the grind back home with them as they're coming back too. And that's all proof of the spatial interaction that is going on between those two locations. Okay? So that's kind of what that is all about. I had to take a little break. I had to have a piece of birthday cake. Like celebrating my birthday with COVID. It's awesome, let me tell you. Okay, what's next? Flow. All right. Think of the Progressive commercials. Never mind. That probably went right over your head. Let's see. And so, we were talking about spatial interaction. I was giving you my little, Vancouver, Portland thing. When we talk about flow, I guess, there's some similarities in there. Patterns, movement of people, products, that kind of thing. I mean, again, we could talk about flow between Portland and Vancouver. It's sort of the same sort of thing. I mean, people who are moving back and forth to work, a lot of again, whether I'm on I-5 or whether I'm on 205, plenty of semi trucks, flow of goods, all that sort of thing. So whenever we see that going on, and again, we'll talk about flow in some of our other units, but that's really what it's referring to. Okay. All right. And then I think this one we already talked about, friction of distance. Oh, that's right. This is this one. And then do I have? Yeah, there we go. Distance decay. These two are pretty much kind of synonymous. I mean, they're both terms you're going to want to be familiar with. And it's just the basic idea. The further things are apart from each other, the less connected they are. Okay, whether we're referring to it as friction of distance or distance decay, that is what it all means. Is I mean, Portland, Vancouver, much less of that because we're so close to each other. High level of interaction between us. But Vancouver and Spokane, Washington, there we go, less connected. Okay, further the distance, we got a mountain range between, all that kind of stuff. Okay, and so you can think of it that way. Now, when I say still relevant, there, it's one of the geographers, human geographers, talk about nowadays is, especially when we talk about so. Maybe when it comes to transportation, if I'm thinking about Vancouver and Spokane, the distance decay is still going to be there. It's going to take you probably 6-7 hours to drive from Vancouver to Spokane. Take you maybe about 90 minutes if you're flying, okay? But, so, I mean, there's still some kind of a transportation, but communications, no, there's no distance decay. There's no friction of distance between us. As a matter of fact, there really, when it comes to communications, there's no friction of distance almost globally anymore. You like we talked about, right up above there, instantaneous, pretty much anywhere around the world. And so, where this used to have a lot of influence, this friction of distance, and this had to, you had to think about this if you were developing businesses, if you were establishing agriculture, you had to think about these kinds of things. It's potentially less of a factor to have to bring into play as is used to be because of improvements in transportation and especially communications. All right, that is that one right there. Okay, patterns and distribution. All right, so with this we're going to jump into here. Patterns, which we've already talked about patterns before. We talked about clustered, linear, dispersed, etc. And so whenever we're looking at kind of just the general way that things are arranged in a space, we're just talking about a pattern, okay? And again, whether that pattern is random or wherever it may be. When we're talking about distribution, we're looking at the way that something is arranged over an area, okay? So just know the little fine difference there between pattern versus distribution. And then spatial association. This gets to be where we can start to see kind of some matching patterns of distribution when we start to compare things between from one map to another. And my maps are probably a little too tiny, but one of them is showing some of these kind of different where we have levels of rainfall. And then this one is showing levels of malaria, okay, the sickness that is mosquito-borne. And mosquitoes usually exist in more kind of in wetter areas. And so, we can see that pattern kind of when we compare these two maps, how climate might have an impact, precipitation have an impact on the spread of a disease, that sort of thing. So matching patterns of distribution. That's kind of what we talk about. Another way to describe it would be the spatial association between those two maps. Okay. Human environmental interaction. Okay. Gets a little bit more into the heart of, really kind of what human geography really is. So, definition I have for you on your sheet just kind of gets this idea about exchanges, interactions between humans and the natural world. Okay, I mean, nothing says human geography really as much of maybe as that does, and so it kind of does. It looks like that dual relationship between us and the natural world that we live in, and it can kind of give us here. Let me go ahead and get this. There we go. Boom. I didn't say why am I saying it? Just get right at there. This can kind of get into whether it's focus on how we deal with natural disasters, how we deal with water scarcity, how we're dealing right now with more extreme climates and or changing climates, those kinds of things. Okay. All that can come into play when we talk about that human environmental interaction, and so I guess some things that you can kind of consider there. Some concepts that tie in with this. Here we go. So natural resources. This is anything that comes from the natural environment that we can use, that humans can use. Okay. Whether it's going to be, like I said, the trees there, solar power, things like that. Okay. Renewable natural resources are going to be kind of resources that are, I guess, in theory, a little bit more unlimited. Okay. I mean, technically speaking, we we can think of, to an extent, water kind of goes in this way. We can think of trees, as long as, as trees are being replanted and, that sort of thing. Okay. So, I mean, that's one of our categories of renewable, non-renewable natural resources. A lot of them usually have to do with, different forms of, as you can see from the image over there, of fuel. Okay. Whether it's, fossil fuels like oil, gas, whether it's coal. These are things that we all know we have a finite supply of, and that as a species, as humans, eventually are going to exhaust all of these that we have on our planet, and then we'll be looking to kind of other resources to to get us through, which is why we see a push going on right now to try to come up with, new energy sources, because we know that whether it's going to be, well, probably not in my lifetime, and maybe not even in yours, but maybe in your kids, we're going to reach a day when there's just, we're going to have basically drawn all the oil from under the surface of the earth that we can get, where we're exhausting, those coal supplies, that sort of thing, and we're going to need other forms of energy. All right, and then there's sustainability, and that's kind of, I guess, if I go back and was talking about renewable resource like trees, that's where we manage the use of resources so that we can make sure that there's going to still be around in the future. When I think of like forest management, I know when I kind of make that drive out to Cannon Beach on Highway 26, you go by some areas of forest land, and they even have signs up that show that this was replanted back in 2012 or 1998, and it's basically publicizing the fact that, hey, we're trying to be sustainable here. We logged off this entire hillside of trees, but look, we put new saplings in, and there's a new forest growing, and and in another 20 or 30 years, we probably can log it off again and have that wood, that timber that we can use then for building and all that. But, then we'll replant. That's what sustainability is all about. It's just, so it's using kind of your smarts, intelligence when it comes to managing resources, those natural resources that we have, so that future generations will still be able to make use of them. And then just making sure that, what kind of like our human footprint that we're having as I guess a lesser environmental impact as we can possibly have. All that kind of ties in with sustainability. All right, land use, pretty much just kind of the way it sounds. Kind of gets into anything, how land and the geography is used, how it's modified, how it's organized, any way that us humans choose to use it. Okay, in any of those kind of ways. The built environment, pretty much the way it sounds. Anything that's been built by human hands on this planet is part of the built environment. Okay, and the difference between that and the cultural landscape. All right, another, again, we're just throwing one vocab term at you after another. It's kind of the same as the built environment, but a lot of times there's going to be a little more cultural difference that's going to come into play. In other words, homes that we have here in the United States are probably going to look different in terms of the size, the way that we arrange our neighborhoods, things like that, than what you're going to see maybe in some European countries, or maybe over in some Asian countries. And so when you can actually see those differences in how humans go about creating their built environment, that's kind of what we refer to as the cultural landscape. Okay, and I'm looking at my vocab sheet to see how I hit it in there. And I've got built by humans, past or present. You can get a little bit more into the history part of it as well. I gave you the picture of the Great Wall of China over there as an example. But again, that's also an example of the built environment. So cultural landscape, just focus on that term culture and how that sometimes makes what we build look a little bit different in different parts of the world. Okay. All right. Let's see. I'm looking at the time. I think we're just going to maybe see what we can do as far as getting. I'm going to go all the way down the bottom. I think we're gonna cut it here. Um, we'll get just a little bit. So human environmental interaction. All right. So we'll talk about the culture of ecology here first. Cultural ecology just kind of gets to the concept of how we adapt ourselves to the environment that we live in. Okay, wherever humans go, what are some of the things that we do to make where we're living work for us? The image that I have for you, I know it's teeny tiny, but kind of shows some what we call terrace farming. Looks like in probably Southeast Asia, and how farmers living in very hilly, kind of landscape are still able to come up with a way of making farming work in that part of the world. I mean, they can't flatten out a whole hill. They might not have, especially going back in time, the tools to be able to do that. And so they have to kind of just use a little bit of ingenuity and terrace farming as a result of that. Okay, a couple of terms that we connected with that: environmental determinism. This is one that again, another one that gets sometimes just get controversial. We get into a debate about it or something like that. It's the idea that that the land, basically the landforms, the human geography, or the physical geography of where we live, the climate of where we live, are the most powerful forces that shape our behavior. Okay. That above everything else, when it comes to how we live our lives, that it's a response to the geography that we live in. Why it gets kind of controversial is that some people believe that, you go back maybe, 2,000 years ago, and maybe that's true. Back in a time before we had many advanced technologies and things like that, because us humans was pretty much we were at the mercy of the world that we lived in, and had very limited tools to be able to deal with that. But if you fast forward that to the 21st century, and where humans have advanced technologically speaking, we have come a long way in being able to, overcome a lot of the issues that sometimes Mother Nature throws at us. We've learned how to build dams. In the Netherlands, they build dikes so that they can hold off the water and use that land for farming, and that sort of thing. And so, determinism. Again, the idea directly behind it is that really it's the land and the climate that is the big driver. But whether that really holds as much true today as it used to, that's kind of up for argument. All right, and then the last thing we're going to get here is concept of possibilism, and this is kind of the flip side of environmental determinism. That just says that this is going to have everything that the landscape, the geography, the climate is going to determine what you can do with your life. Possibilism comes from the other direction and says that we might have some limits that are thrown at us because of the geography that we live in, but humans have vast capacity to problem solve. And when we think of the possibilities of what we're able to do to problem solve and to create solutions to some of the issues that we face, especially when it comes to our natural environment that we live in, that's kind of where possibilism, that's what it's all about. Okay, it's kind of the answer to environmental determinism, and just says that humans down through history have always been able to kind of piece things together and figure things out. So boom, there we go. And I think that's where I'm going to hit the brakes, because that gets us to number 50 on our vocab list. And that means that doing this, we've had the opportunity to talk about all the vocabulary that's going to be on your quiz next week, because I will be back next week. I'm going to be back next week. This is making me crazy. So let's roll. Go hit it. Hopefully you got plenty of information for your left column there. Okay. But make sure that these notes are ready to go, because when I'm back, we're going to make the drive towards wrapping up on Unit 1, and yeah, that'll be waiting for us when we get back together next week. Okay, all right. Until then, guys, take care. See you later.